And a pleasant day to you. WPFR, Terre Haute, Indiana. We got about 33 minutes after the hour of 6. This is Monday, November 26, 1973, and this is WPFR Teletalk. A little time we are WPFR set aside each week so that you, our listeners, might call in and voice your opinions, ideas, and observations on issues that you consider interesting or vital or controversial. We'd like to listen to your views. That's the purpose of this program. It is your program. So we do invite your calls now at 533-1661. My name is Bob Marks, and I'll be talking to you this evening when you call in. When you do call up, the first thing I'll ask is, can I put you on the air? We have to do this for legal purposes. WPFR, may I put you on the air? Okay, go ahead, please. Okay, go ahead, please.
I just wanted to state that I think if the people of this country don't do something about President Nixon now and impeachment, that we're going to end up just like Nazi Germany did.
I don't understand. What do you mean?
Well, he has too much power. The things that he's done that's come out in Watergate and the energy crisis that he's making for this country is just a shame. He just tells us what he's going to do and dares us to do something about it. They just found against him the other day on that court case where they took him to court over those tapes, and they said that's an obstruction of justice, and that they legally ruled he had no right to fire Archibald Cox, but he did it anyways.
Well, what do you think we could do about it?
I think he must be impeached. I think if he isn't impeached, that he won't get out of the office until he's good and ready.
In other words, you think the presidency is becoming too top-heavy, it's becoming too powerful, President Nixon?
Has too much power for any one person for this to remain a democracy.
You know, so many people were saddened by the fact that President Nixon got all of the power to allocate energy that he did.
Yeah.
And they thought it was that was just making it a little more top-heavy. And that the reason Congress did that was because it's an unpopular thing to do, this rationing of energy and this conservation of energy, because it inconveniences people, and people don't like to be inconvenienced.
Well, I think Mr. Nixon or President Nixon will do anything to get the people's mind off of Watergate, because there is so much upheaval in the country over it. My brother-in-law works for Marathon Oil. And he has told me that they are shutting down oil wells in this country. We have more oil than we're using now, but since we've got the energy crisis, President Nixon has ordered the oil wells shut down. So we're not using all the oil that we already have.
That's rather...
I believe that the drastic measures they're taking, but there are oil wells right around here that they're shut down.
Are these oil wells still producing? Do they have...
They're producing.
That's rather strange. What then would you say to all of the conservation of energy that's going on in Europe now?
Well, Europe doesn't have the natural resources that we did. When Hitler took power in '33, the people said then that, that Hitler would have to stop for lack of oil, but he took countries that had oil. He had Ploiasti, which at that time had about 50% of the world's oil.
He had what now?
Ploiasti. They took Ploiasti in Romania.
Oh, okay.
They had the great big oil wells they bombed during the war. But Hitler captured countries that had oil, which enabled him to go ahead and make World War II. But this country had its own natural resources. But Europe doesn't, has to depend on outside sources for almost all its energy, so it really hurts Europe worse than it does the United States. They have always been much more energy conscious. Look at their little cars and things. But that never bothered the people in the United States because we always had plenty.
Do you think Richard Nixon then is snowing the United States and the populace about the energy crisis?
I think that we probably have used more energy than we should, but I think that he wants to play it for all it's worth to get the people's mind off Watergate, because there's no way anybody in his right mind can believe that President Nixon is completely innocent. And if he is guilty in any part of it, then he should be impeached, because at any time that the President of the United States can openly defy the law, how can he expect the common people not to?
Okay, now when did you believe that President Nixon openly defied the law?
Well, when he refused to turn over the Watergate tape, and then he turned them over and has erased part of them, or somebody in his employ erased part of them, because I personally heard Nixon say on the radio and on TV that he was personally responsible for all those tapes, and he would not turn them over to anybody. And now it's come out that his secretary, supposedly she accidentally erased it. he gave them to H.L. Halderman. He took them to his house and left them there for 3 or 4 days, and there have been several people listening to this tapes, but yet the American people couldn't listen to them. And that judge in the federal court ruled against Richard Nixon and said he had no right to fire Archibald Cox, that it was unconstitutional and it created an obstruction of justice. And that's a rather serious offense for the President of the United States.
Yes, it is.
And, just the other day, when he said, just before this last speech he made.
Do you mean the one this morning or yesterday's?
Yesterday evening on TV,
Okay.
about the energy crisis.
Right.
That the American people would have to do without a little bit. Yet he has Air Force One, which is his own private jet, and he burned 2,200,000 gallons of fuel the day he had, or the weekend he had the press conference in Disneyland. He went to his personal home out there in California, and he went to Disneyland for this press conference. And he doesn't stay in the White House. He's always going to Camp David. How can we supposedly do without all our energy, yet the president burns it up like it's going out of style?
So this irritates
airline fuel, yet his personal jet burned all this fuel.
So this irritates you a little bit then, right?
Yes, it does. I don't understand why the president can't stay in the White House, why he has to fly back and forth to La Costa in Florida, and why, if we're going to have a press conference, why didn't he hold it in the White House? Why did he have to fly to Disneyland? And I don't know. I listen to about all these press conferences. I think everybody should. But I thought he was rather nasty with the reporters, that one he had in the White House, where he told them he had no respect for them or the news media. If it was the news media, people of the United States would not know what is going on.
Yeah, he said that he wasn't angry with them because you had to respect somebody you were angry with.
That's right.
Is that right?
I mean, I definitely believe in freedom of the press. I think it should have limits on it, but if you don't have freedom of the press, then nobody's going to know only what whoever's in power wants you to know. And I'm quite sure that nothing would have come out about Watergate if the newspapers had not forced it.
I agree. I truly agree.
I think we need freedom of the news media.
Well,
John Myers and Birch Bayh and Vance Hartke. And I think everybody should, like the senator. The senator should know how the American people feel. They cannot vote adequately if they do not know your feelings.
Well, you know what Congressman Myers said? He said possibly at one time the energy crisis was started by the oil companies. We haven't talked about that. But he says now it's a real thing, and this is our own congressman here in Indiana.
Well, I know John Myers sent me a letter back, and he is, of course, not in favor of impeachment of Richard Nixon. And I was very disappointed in Mr. Myers, or John Myers, because of that. I thought that he would be, because when you stop and think, Richard Nixon was vice president for 8 years. He's been president for going on 5 years now. For the last 20 years, he has been in a very high public office for 13 of them. Well, not the last 20, but he was acting president under Dwight Eisenhower for quite a while also.
Right.
And that's the same thing. I don't see how these little people in his organization could have supposedly pulled the wool over President Nixon's eyes when he is supposed to be such an adept politician, and he has been around for so long.
So you definitely think the man should be impeached then?
I definitely do, sir. I think that after Richard Nixon is impeached, the next president or any other president will think twice before he does anything illegal, because he will know that even the presidency will not keep him from the law.
Let me ask you this. Do you think Gerald Ford should become the next president in case President Nixon is resigned, or do you think the Speaker of the House should get it?
I think the Speaker of the House should be, and then I do not think that a president that is impeached or is going to be impeached should elect the next vice president. If Gerald Ford deserves the nomination, that is one thing, but I do not think that Richard Nixon, if he is impeached, should be allowed to do it.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you so much for calling. Do you have any other thing you'd like to talk about?
No, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Bye-bye. Well, there's one man's opinion on what is going on in the White House today. He believes that President Nixon should be impeached. He believes the energy crisis is being put on by Richard Nixon. I had heard people thinking of such things. They had told me they had thought such things. But usually the energy crisis was blamed on the oil companies. Maybe it's a combination of the two. Maybe there's a lot of factors in it. What's your opinion? Would like to hear it at 533-1661, 533-1661. The gentleman that just called mentioned the erasure of the White House tapes. That, of course, happened from the president's secretary, Miss Rosemary Woods, who testified today that she accidentally erased part of the tapes, part of the Watergate tapes. She said she immediately informed President Nixon, and President Nixon said, well, that's okay. And as the gentleman did mention also, President Nixon has said that he will take full responsibility for the tapes. So what's your opinion on the big mess? We'd like your opinion at 533-1661, 533-1661. Again, this Teletalk program is not particularly limited to national issues. We can go on the international scene to such things as the Mideast crisis, or we can narrow it down here into Terre Haute, or even your own backyard. This is your program. This is your chance to let your telephone be your microphone and go out over the airways at 533-1661, 533-1661. President Nixon, in his talk last night, said he was going to initiate Project Independence 1980, and the purpose of the Project Independence was, of course, to make the United States independent from other countries as far as fuel needs go. In other words, we wouldn't have to depend on the Arabs for our fuel allotments and our fuel consumption. One of the most controversial things he said, as far as I am concerned, was that gas stations should be closed from 9 p.m. Saturday to midnight Sunday. This will be on a voluntary basis, as I understand, for a while, and later on will be passed into law. What do you think about gas stations being closed from 9 p.m. Saturday to midnight Sunday? Do you think this will curtail the consumption of energy, or do you think everybody's going to go to their local discount supermarket and buy themselves a 5-gallon gas can like I believe I am? Do you think it's good? Do you think it will work? How do you think this is going to affect you? Are you going to be inconvenienced by the gas station closing from 9 p.m. Saturday to midnight Sunday, or are you going to fill up on Saturday? What's your opinion on the whole thing? We would like it. Do you think there might be a better way to curtail this consumption of energy? What do you think? This is your show, your chance to voice your opinion on it at 533-1661, 533-1661. What about industry? Do you think we should put a little more constraint on industry and their consumption of energy? Industry uses a vast majority of the energy that is consumed in this country, as I understand. The argument against curtailing the consumption of energy in industry is, of course, the skyrocketing dive of industry. What do you think about curtailing it in industry, the consumption of energy? What's your opinion? 533-1661. On the local scene, the energy crisis hit Indiana a little bit over the Thanksgiving break, especially the college students. It seems that a lot of the college students here in Indiana, primarily at Indiana University and also at ISU and the other local colleges here in town, it hit them because they couldn't get themselves a ride home over the holidays. This was, of course, because of the cutback in flights. Do you think it might be better to have more flights? Do you think this would discourage people from driving as much? We would like your opinion at 533-1661. Would like to know how many people out there are conserving energy. Are you driving 50 miles an hour or 60 miles an hour on the interstates? Are you turning your thermostat down to 65 degrees? Or are you like some people I've talked to here at WPFR who say they're going to use energy until there ain't no more and then they're going to stop it? We'd like to know what you think of the whole thing. Do you think, as this gentleman who we just talked to, that the energy crisis is being started by President Nixon? Do you think that it might have possibly been started by the major oil companies to get their Alaska pipeline, which they now have, as well as to eliminate some of their smaller gas station competitions? We'd like to hear your opinions at 533-1661. For those interested, if we have time later on, we'll be reading you some tips on how you can save energy in your home, in your auto, and everywhere. We've talked a little bit about energy and Watergate. How was your Thanksgiving? Thanksgiving just ended, of course. We might have a turkey shortage. I had a lengthy discussion on my visit. I visited West Virginia over the holidays, and we had a lengthy discussion about the cutting of sandwiches. And it seems that when you cut a sandwich diagonally, even turkey sandwiches for that matter, when you cut them diagonally, they seem to taste better. I think everybody agrees with this, but nobody seems to know why. If there's somebody out there listening that can tell us why diagonally cut sandwiches taste better than uncut sandwiches or horizontally cut sandwiches, would like to hear from you. That'd be interesting if somebody has any theory on that. There's just something about a diagonally cut sandwich that makes it taste so much better. Oh, we can talk about all sorts of things. We've had all sorts of interesting people call here in our program. We've talked about drugs extensively. We seemed for a couple weeks to have a rather large college audience from Indiana State University, and we talked a lot about drugs, about the status of drugs, about the consumption of drugs, particularly that of marijuana, and also the legalization and some of the aspects of that. We had also many calls from some of our older audience who were very much against the consumption of marijuana. So that could be something we could bring up again. We had some homosexuals call one time, one male and one female, and it was kind of ironic that there's some fascination, at least for me, about talking to a homosexual. It's something that's very alien to my nature and my environment, and it's fascinating, and it's kind of bizarre, but they were interesting to talk to. We had a guy call up one time and play his guitar over the radio. We don't want to encourage that, but that was something rather interesting. We've had trappers call up and say that they don't wish the legislation for the steel traps, the banning of snap traps to go through, or whatever that is, because it isn't humane to animals. At least this is the opinion that they expressed. And also, one of our other interesting calls, we had a call from a criminology major from Indiana State University who said she consumed marijuana. This is a criminology major now, and
I just can't hardly eat anything.
You know, I understand that cancer, of course, is the second greatest killer in the United States after heart disease.
I've had it 4 different times, and I don't see why they have to leave this thing on there. They promised to take it off, but they changed their mind after the 10th month, had me still in the hospital. And it just broke my heart, and I can't drink juice or eat raw fruit or nothing like that.
How does it feel to have cancer? What effects does it have on you?
I just get pains in my back, you know, where your shoulder blades is in the back, and I don't get sick of my stomach or nothing like that, but I just have pains around the little thing, and then I have to keep taking the liquid medicine all the time and pills for diarrhea and stuff like that. That's where this infects me. And I get awful blue. It makes you awful nervous, and you have to take nerve pills.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, but I take my doctor's prescription, though.
Have you, you said you had cancer before?
Salami. I forget how you pronounce it. Sloppy, or I can't say it. Ain't that funny? Anyway, it's a bag you wear, plastic, and then you could wear a big head. But sometimes now for 2 or 3 days, why, it's all right. It's just fine. If I take enough of this medicine, liquid medicine, and then paregoric, I pour in it. But anyway, it's an awful life to live, but I'm hoping and praying that it's better than it used to be. It ain't bad as it used to be. And I don't have no blood or nothing like that, or no discharge or nothing, and I'm glad of that. But it seems like it's changed around the back a little bit, but yet not completely, I guess, until they'd operate on me and change it right.
I see.
But it worries you, you know.
Well, I understood, getting back again, you said you had cancer before. Were you cured of cancer?
Oh, yes. I was in 53, and I was in 62, and this is the 3rd time.
Now, how were you cured of cancer?
Well, I was operated on.
Oh, I see.
And then given treatment afterward. And in 62, they give me the operation, the treatment afterwards. But this time, they give me the treatments first, which I think caused me to have the diarrhea with the cancer. But
I'm telling you, it just breaks you all up, and it makes you a nervous wreck sometime. I have to take, while I cry, I get worked up, I cry when I can't get the tape on right. I use, so much tape.
Tape.
Yeah, tape, what you put on a sore finger.
Oh, I see. Mm-hmm.
Silk tape and cotton-proof, rain-proof tape, and, waterproof tape. And then, I have to use a spray. And some women never is bothered with it after they've had it 25 years and 10 years that I know. Just never bothered with it. But, boy, gee, not me. I get the worst kind, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm hoping and praying that the Lord will turn it around where it belongs. Or they'll operate on me right.
Well, you certainly have at least...
I love to eat, and I love to bake, and cook, and I just can't eat no raw fruit, or juices, or pop, or Coke.
Yeah.
And if I drink a little bit, oh my goodness, it's terrible. So I don't drink. I can't even drink pop.
You can't?
Mm-mm.
Wow, that's unfortunate. Well, we hope you a speedy recovery. Maybe you can get this one cured
Your
also.
music just makes me feel so much better. It gets my mind off of myself, see?
The country music.
I stay in so much. I don't go out much, and your country music just gets my mind off of myself, off of the thing, and that's why I love it so much.
Well, that's the reason for radio, for entertainment. It is an escape.
It's sure wonderful. I don't know what in the world people would do without it.
Yeah, that's true.
I wouldn't give you 2 cents for TVs. Now, they're all right for people with loads. I have 16 TVs, but my husband died, dropped dead, about 9 years ago.
Yeah.
And he loved TV, but I liked it pretty well then, but I got away from it after I sold it. And,
yeah, that'll do it. That'll get you away from it when you sell it.
Away from it. These people's got a beautiful colored TV.
Oh,
It's in chop already again, but it's always in chop.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think
I sure hope they get that fixed up, that gasoline too, myself.
Yeah.
That's terrible. Some poor guys have to walk to work and ride bicycles, and I just feel so sorry for them and the women.
Hey, well, thank you so much for calling this evening. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
There's one lady, and we talked about a lot here. You're in tune with WPFR Terre Haute, Indiana. This is WPFR Teletalk. WPFR, may I put you on the air? May I put you on the air? Oh, yeah, we're having our talk program, Oh, can I put you on the air then? Oh, okay. Go ahead. Go ahead.
You were talking about the speed limits and people slowing down,
Right.
And I was driving in Tennessee, and the 75 there, on the expressway, and the buses were going 80.
The buses were going 80. Is that right?
That's right.
So
there was a tourist bus, and they were, when we pulled out from the stop, I thought, well, I'll get ahead of them. But I got ahead of them, but I couldn't stay ahead.
Is that right? Buses were going 80 miles an hour.
Yeah. I had to go 85 to go around them. I went around them once, but I thought I'd let them have it.
Now, you're confessing to a crime now.
Yeah.
You were speeding on the interstate, and President Nixon wanted you to go 50. Pardon?
That was fun.
That's really wonderful. I don't think as many people were as lucky. At least I wasn't. Maybe it was because I was driving at night, and many of the service stations have just decided to close down their 24-hour operation.
I didn't drive at night. I drove during the day.
Mm-hmm.
And I got lost in Montgomery. I always do coming back. I can go through it going down, but coming back, I always make the wrong turn.
Yeah. I thought you were going to be down there for the winter. And
I thought I was, but I had bad luck.
Why? What happened?
my apartment wasn't ready, and it was terrible. I wouldn't have it.
Oh, is that right?
And I had 3 people looking for places for me, but nobody had anything. Disney World has spilled out up that far, you know.
Disney World.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's right. Disney World was down there. That's where the president had one of his news
They spread out
conferences.
and taken all the rentals, and now they're starting to build, but he said it would be, a year or 2 years before they're finished.
Have you ever visited Disney World? I understand that is one of the most fantastic places in the world.
I was there last April.
Was it completed then?
Yes.
How did you enjoy it?
What I saw of it was all right. It's rather expensive.
Is it rather expensive?
But I was with my sister, and she was kind of late getting around, so we didn't see too much. But, we saw the House of Presidents, wax presidents, figurines, you know, those were nice. And what else did we see? I don't remember now. But anyway, we didn't see very much. It cost us $4.50 to ride the monorail.
Is that right? That is quite a...
Well, I'll let you go by. Maybe somebody else will call you and talk.
Oh. Okay, well, thank you so much for calling. Okay, nice to have you back. Bye-bye. Little technical difficulty there in the end. This is WPFR, Terre Haute, Indiana, 5 minutes after the hour of 7 o'clock. We're talking about all sorts of things. Mostly it's just been a casual conversation, which is okay. This is your program, and you get to use it as you see fit. Usually I like to take and have the program take its own course, which it seems to be doing tonight fairly nicely. Again, we invite your calls on just about any subject at 533-1661, 533-1661. Again, it really surprised me in driving from, again, this is from Indianapolis to Columbus, that there was not one gas station open. I started out driving slow because I thought, hey, I'm going to be conserving fuel for the nation and everybody else, and it was a good thing. And every time my tank got below about half a tank, I would stop and fill up. But it started to scare me as I drove onward, and anytime my tank got below a quarter, I decided I'd stop and fill up, and it was a fortunate thing I did, or I might not be back here today. What's your opinions on the energy crisis, on President Nixon, on what's happening in the world? We invite your calls at 533-1661, 533-1661. This is, of course, the deer hunting season. Well, down in West Virginia, all of my relatives went deer hunting. I don't particularly enjoy hunting, but they seem to. If there's a hunter out there that might like to explain to myself and maybe some of the women, I don't mean to tag myself as effeminate because I don't believe I am, but if there was anybody out there that would like to explain the joy of hunting, what is the joy, the sportsman idea in hunting, we would invite you to call at 533-1661. The killing of the animal doesn't bother me as much as the physical exertion. I guess possibly I'm lazy. Also, while I was down there, I had quite an experience. I shot a cow. We were going to butcher it up and divide it up among the family. I have an uncle that shot a cow, about 2 years back, and I understand he shot the cow. You shoot them right in the head with a .22 pistol. The cow has big brown eyes. He looked up at my uncle after he shot him, and he kind of went, moo, and all 4 of his legs spread out. And to this day, when my uncle's eating beef, you can look at him with big sad eyes and go, moo, and he pushes away his plate of beef and excuses himself. I didn't feel any such thing, but it was kind of interesting, and he's quite a character anyway. So, we've talked about energy this evening. I mentioned all of the gas stations that were closed in my little excursion. Are you conserving energy? Is the energy crisis hitting you in any capacity? Are you going to put up your Christmas lights this year? I believe it was Public Service Indiana. I hope I have the figure right. It was 0.4% or 0.04% of the energy put out by Public Service Indiana is normally used in lighting. This is an infinitesimal amount and can almost be disregarded. They say, don't worry about it. What do you think? What's your opinion? Do you think Christmas lighting maybe should be banned? Do you think there should be a ban put on it? Do you think it's a frivolous thing that maybe we could get along without? Or do you think it would degrade from the spirit of Christmas. What's your opinion? 533-1661. How are you working in the energy crisis? Do you think it's effective? Again, has it affected you? Are you conserving energy? Are you driving 50 miles an hour and going 65? You know, I started out, I said I drove slow in going from Terre Haute to West Virginia, and I started out at 50 miles an hour, and it was an ungodly feeling. I felt like I was crawling and wasting time, and I almost became neurotic, and I finally compromised and went there at 60 miles an hour. 50 miles an hour is awful slow, I tell you, on the interstate when you're used to going 70. Ted Ford had a good solution for the energy crisis, especially in the city. Of course, it's the installation of fireplaces. And then the question arises, what are the people in the city going to do with these fireplaces? And Ted said, well, they're not going to have any energy there, so they can go chop down the telephone poles and use that for firewood. That might be interesting. How was your Thanksgiving? Did you have any particular exciting thing that happened over Thanksgiving? Did you get your 15-point buck when you went deer hunting? Let us know. Let the world know. 533-1661. We'd like to hear from you. This is your program. This is your chance to tell the world what you feel and your opinions and your ideas. We have 10 minutes after the hour of 7 o'clock, and we'll take your calls for another 5 minutes, then we're going to take a break for news, and then we're going to come back with a little more Teletalk until nobody else wants to call in. The lady that called in 2 calls ago mentioned about the Skylab. We had a discussion last week that it was rather ironic that every time a Skylab rocket went up that we had bad weather here in Terre Haute. And generally all over the place. The Skylab thing bunched off, and we had rainy weather last week, and we just had a couple of tornadoes, and it's rather interesting. I mentioned also last week that I recall reading in a book called Stranger Than Science. I don't remember who wrote it, but it was a fascinating book on stranger than fiction, truth is stranger than fiction type of material. And he did a research on major storms that seemed to occur after major wars. In World War II, the Korean War, as far back as the Civil and Revolutionary Wars. After a big war and lots of firing and thunder and everything, that there seemed to be weather. And it also maintained that this was the method that was used by some of the rainmakers. They used to bring out their cannons and pound on their big bass drums, and possibly the noise was something that disturbed the atmosphere. And also, as I mentioned before, Ted Ford said he heard on the radio, possibly on ABC News here at WPFR, that scientists have done research by way of satellite and have concluded that all that man has done here on Earth, this includes hard. You talk to Doug Haldeman because he doesn't think it's very hard. He's done it about 50 or 60 times. The poor kid just couldn't put the daggone things down, and he became very neurotic as a result. That might be something else we could talk about that just entered my mind, which I'll relate to you right here, and that is the advertising of cigarettes on radio and television. I noticed on one of the local stations are advertising a cigarette dispenser for Christmas. Do you think it's fair to ban cigarette ads and cigarette advertising and allow such things as cigarette dispensers to be advertised on television? They, of course, banned the advertising of the little cigars, which were becoming prevalent. We could also talk in a similar vein about one of my pet peeves, which I've tried to get brought up here on Teletalk, but nobody seems to want to call in about it, and that is television and the waste that television has become. I, for one, am a television addict. I can sit down, I can turn on the TV and waste an entire evening watching situation comedies and cheap mysteries. Possibly these aren't the worst things that are on TV. I think the worst things that are on television are the commercials. And I wasn't aware of this until, this is ironic, until I saw a special on television about what commercials tried to do to you. For one, they try to breed on your insecurity. In other words, if you are starved for love, the motion picture will try, or the advertisement will try to say, if you use their product, you'll have love. And as a result, it seems that the average television viewer is a little more neurotic than other people. For example, there was one commercial that said, look at that pretty girl, and me here without my toothpaste. or a mouthwash, I think it was. That's utterly bizarre and utterly ridiculous. And as you watch it, you don't think it affects you. But upon viewing this special again, I realized how much it had messed me up. And I just wanted to maybe pass that on to you. Do you agree with that, or do you think television is a fantastic media? I believe that there are certain good things on television. I enjoy watching a good movie or watching the news, but generally it's pretty bad stuff. This, again, is my own opinion. What is your opinion? That's what we're interested in at 533-1661. Do you watch soap operas? I, at one time, when I was very small, about 6 or 7, got into one soap opera and watched it for about 3 years, and I don't think anything happened. But it was kind of good to kill the time. What's your opinion on it? 533-1661. You can call up, and we'll just let you talk and express your opinion on it. 533-1661. 533-1661. Oh, let's see. The Boston Strangler died, as you know. DeSalvo, who was declared mentally incompetent, has allegedly been murdered. And this brings up an interesting point, which is capital punishment. DeSalvo, of course, was admitted to prison, I believe, because he was considered insane. He was a schizophrenic. He had the split personality. Do you believe such people should be cared for by your tax dollar, or do you believe they should be disposed of? WPFR, may I put you on the air? Okay, go ahead. Okay, go ahead. Boy, hi. Real good.
Good.
This is Rick, right?
Right.
Rick Engelman. How are you, Rick?
Just fine. I hope everyone had a good Thanksgiving.
Yeah. How was your Thanksgiving?
Oh, pretty good. I, like everybody else, I think, wasted some energy this weekend going on a personal trip, back home. But I don't know. It's kind of interesting. I was trying to, on the way back, just out of curiosity, from Indianapolis to Terre Haute, I was driving about 50. And there was only one other person on the whole highway who was going 50.
Is that right?
That I could see, Everyone else, zoom, zoom, zoom by.
Well, it's one thing for everybody to go 50, and it's another thing to reduce your speed limit. Like before, I was used to driving at around 75 miles per hour.
Right.
Because I understood that policemen, if you're going between 70 and 75 miles an hour, that they'll give you the benefit of the doubt. They'll let you pass. If you're going between 75 and 80, it's up to them whether they have to meet their quota or not, or how they're feeling at the time. And above 80, they're required to stop you. This is hearsay, secondhand type of information, but I've never had any trouble with it.
Well, I once got a warning for 80, but...
well, at any rate, again, I was used to driving 75, so as I mentioned, I tried to go 50 miles an hour, but it seemed to be such a slow process, so I kind of compromised myself and went 60 miles an hour, which for me was a reduction of 15 miles per hour above my usual.
Right. Well, I agree with you that the whole thing, they can say, well, overnight the speed limit's going to go down to 50, and I honestly don't believe people are going to drive slower, but I think just by saying that, gee, we do have a shortage, and gee, driving slower is going to prevent it, I really think people are going to start driving slower. Now, I was noticing around Terre Haute some of the local Terre Haute people, like tonight I just drove from down at Honey Creek out to 46 here, and I was noticing some of the local Terre Haute people pretty well sticking to the 50 mile an hour range.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty close to that. I've noticed that before, so I think, that's a good sign, but I think it's going to take a while for people to get used to going 50. 50 seems so doggone slow.
Yeah, it does.
It really does.
It's unfortunate, too,
Right.
But I think people are going to have to realize that. I think the American public, most of the people that call in here don't believe that there is an energy crisis. Can you believe that? I think there is. I don't know. This is my own personal opinion. I don't think anybody can perpetrate a hoax as big as the one that which is now being perpetrated, if it indeed is a hoax.
Well,
it's just ungodly.
I don't believe that it's a hoax at all. I think it's here. Some of the stuff that, in hindsight, you can always look back and say, well, why didn't the oil company do this, or why didn't the government do this, and so forth. And Yeah, you can always say that in hindsight, but it's awful hard ahead of time to see what's going on and to react in a manner that's going to prevent what's going to come. I think the only clear example I've ever seen of that is the environmental situation with pollution and so forth. And it did get bad for a while, but with the results of what we've had, pollution's been cut down pretty much, I think, and it's going to continue to be cut down. I think the more people we get, we're still going to be able to control it, whereas before it would have kind of gotten out of control. I think this is kind of the same type thing.
Well, pollution is going to have to be sacrificed a little bit. We're going to have to pollute a little more because of our energy crisis.
Well, I'm not necessarily 100% convinced of that.
Is that right?
Well, I don't know. A lot of people were talking about, maybe we will, I'm not sure. A lot of people were talking about power companies having shortages and so forth. Well, I know around here we're not expected to have a shortage. And in fact, surprisingly, in the Midwest, at least in the Indiana, Ohio area, the same thing. Most of the energy is generated, I guess, by coal as it is now. But some of the other power plants on the East Coast, I guess, are of other types of energy. I'm not sure exactly what they are, but their backup systems are high sulfur coal, and this high sulfur coal is polluting.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the thing is, though, if people are willing to cut back on their electrical needs, if they're willing to turn their electrical heat down to 68 degrees, and if they're willing to cut back on some of the lighting displays and so forth, that, really that can make the difference, and maybe we just won't have to start polluting anymore. It's a whole matter of how much you want to sacrifice, kind of give and take thing.
Yeah. This is WPFR, Terre Haute, Indiana. Are you a little chillier?
Yeah.
Have you turned on your thermostat at all?
Well, I live in an apartment, so I can't legally turn down my thermostat, but we have ways of making it go down.
Opening the windows.
Well, we have a little grill over the top of it, and there's little slits in the side of the grill, and, a screwdriver in the slit.
I see. Has your apartment complex reduced the temperature at all?
No, as a matter of fact, they hadn't. But I have the thermostat in my room, and I've reduced it, so.
Oh, you do have individual thermostats?
Well, no, I have the whole floor, so everyone on the floor is going to get cold.
I wonder if they'll come to you and
No, I don't think they will, because it's been like this for quite a while.
Uh-huh.
So I haven't heard any complaints yet. My landlord doesn't know that it's that low. But
do you think Christmas lights are a big cut in the electrical expenses?
I'm not sure the Christmas lights are, but I think that certainly when you get all these lights out there, they do draw some electricity. President Nixon, I was lucky. I did catch his speech last night. I thought he brought up several good points. In this area, of course, public service has been saying there is no shortage of electricity and so forth. So maybe it doesn't make any difference, but he is proposing a ban on outdoor lighting other than signs at places of businesses. And I heard one newsman add that we're open, but the president didn't specifically say that. He said at home offices of places of business.
Yeah.
And so I would assume, a lot of these signs that are up, billboards and so forth, cut down the electricity there. Signs maybe above the expressway for gas stations and so forth, maybe get them turned out when they're not open or something. And I think in the long run, that's going to save power.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know.
We're going to have some drastic curtailment, I guess. President Nixon, of course, proposed, a 15% cut on available gas?
Well, what he did, Bob, the way I understood it, again, sometimes, I hate to be critical of the media, but sometimes I think the newsmen just do not listen to what the president say. Now, last night he said that a 15% cut in production of gasoline, but that petroleum would in turn be used to create more heating oil. So, it's kind of a compromise. Yes, you're going to have less gas, but you're going to have more heating oil. And so, it's not that he's saying, hey, let's stop it. He's kind of saying, well, let's divert it to a different area so at least we'll have not quite as bad a situation in the heating oil.
I see. In other words, sacrifice driving a little bit for home heating.
Right.
Oh, I see.
And when you think about it, which is really more important? I expect, if you had a choice of going on pleasure drives or something and keeping halfway warm in your home,
Mm-hmm.
you'd rather keep warm. But,
well, it'll be interesting to see what finally happens.
well, it's hard to say. I like President Nixon's idea of becoming independent. And by 1980, I would question whether it's possible because of America's growing needs all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And, somewhat limited resources, but or somewhat overused resources, you might say. The one guy, your first caller, was mentioning that a lot of oil wells and stuff were being shut down. And I found that out too, but the way I understand it, a lot of the oil that was coming from this is like high sulfur oil and stuff that would normally be used to generate things that are not in great need now. And they're shutting down those oil wells so that the refineries can work full force to give us the things that we do need. Apparently, the refineries is where the real backup is right now. Where
This is WPFR Terre Haute, Indiana. We have about. What do you think about President Nixon's policy, Project Independence, 1980?
I think that the independence of the United States is a very good thing, but I think that if the president was impeached, that the oil crisis would be over much quicker.
Is that right?
I definitely do.
Now, why is that? What connection does the President of the United States have with the energy crisis, as far as the reasons for the...
that he is taking are going to actually materially help the energy crisis.
They're not.
No, I do not think they will, and I think there are several people have said the same thing. I think he is doing more to really upset the nation and scare the nation than he does actually help the nation.
What do you think we could do besides what President Nixon has suggested? Do you think there would be better measures?
Yes, I'm not a particularly smart enough person to know what those are, but I listened to the president's speech, and in fact I taped the president's speech, and I can play it for the fellow if he'd like to hear it. But he did say that they were cutting back home heating fuels 15%.
Mm-hmm.
They were cutting back industrial fuels 10%, and they were cutting back businesses 25%.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're going to cut back on gasoline in order to take the fuel oil that would be, the crude oil that would be turned into gasoline, into heating fuel.
Right.
But I do not agree with cutting down the speed limit, and if so, I don't think that the trucks should be allowed to go faster than the cars. The trucks and buses are not more economical than cars, and anyone that knows anything about engines knows that.
Well, the idea, I think, is number one, that the trucks are the people that move all of the merchandise around the United States. So this is going to be a big boost in the economy to let them go a little bit faster, because we'll get the machinery, the mechanics of the economy chugging a little bit faster. That will be allowed for by the faster speed limits. Second of all, the bus is going faster.
Well, that I don't understand, because your buses are for sightseeing and travel between, cities,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't find people going to work on them type of buses. They're going to different parts of the country, and that's supposedly what we're supposed to be curtailing, is pleasure driving, vacations and stuff of that sort.
Well, that is a good point.
City buses, if you follow some of them, sometimes you can see how well they do on fuel economy. They just about gas you out.
Yeah, that's for true. But I imagine that there are going to be a lot more people taking the bus because of the airline cutback, the cutback in flights.
Yes, I think so.
And a lot of this is going to be for business. Now, hopefully, I guess ideally it'd be better if you could cut out the travel altogether and have your have things done by phone, have your business transacted over phone. However, if people are going to travel for pleasure, and they have to travel for pleasure, I think maybe you'd have to agree to be better to take the bus, because you get more passengers per mile, if you will, than you do in a car. I would think, just offhand, maybe that isn't the case.
I think you're right, but The way I understand him from talking to his speech, he wants us to stay home instead of just traveling around.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that the president should have the right to tell people when they can open their business and when they close the business. To me, that's awful risky business.
Do you think the president then is too powerful?
I definitely think he is too powerful. I think, in my recollection of history, I can't remember any president having this much power. It's getting close to what Franklin Delano Roosevelt, possibly more than he had when we were at war. And we're not at war.
Does this scare you at all?
It does, very much so. I think it scares any student of history. Really, this is following awful close the guidelines that Hitler laid down when he went to power. I mean, they're not identical, but several things that Nixon has done have been the same type of moves that Adolf Hitler took when he got to power.
Hmm.
And I mean, we're not going to walk in one night and say that it's all over with. It's going to be a military dictatorship. It's going to come little by little, but if a person just remembers what it was like when Richard Nixon first got in, and little by little what has come since he has gotten in.
I don't think it's only Richard Nixon. I think the last few presidents, each one has gotten more and more powerful.
I think each president has gotten a little more power. I agree with you. I don't think it's just one man, but I think it's a state of affairs that keeps getting worse with each president. And I think it's time that the American people stopped it and we got back to what they used to have back when we formed this country.
Which is?
To be run by the people, and he was supposed to represent us.
Mm-hmm.
He told us what to do. I don't know. I think it's a time where every American has to sit down and think about it instead of just let the other guy do it.
Do you think the president should be impeached then, I imagine?
I definitely feel he should. I think that he just dares the American people to do it and thinks they won't have the courage to do so. And I think I'm going to have to agree with him. I don't think the people in this country do anymore. On the whole, they seem to, let George do it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. There's never been a vice president taken out before either. And that's already happened.
Yeah, that's true. And I think, as you do, as you stated, I think initially that as a result of the media.
I'm very unbiased towards the media, maybe a little too much so, but I think on the whole they usually represent the people's feelings, and they're the only source that the American people or the world is really going to have. And I remember when this first came up and the Washington Post first started their series of articles on Watergate, Richard Nixon filed suit against it. And he lost the suit as the only reason it ever got out. He sued him for slander. And they proved it was true.
Oh.
And so therefore there is no slander.
Yeah.
And I just don't think that if it hadn't been for the Washington Post and the other newspapers that started this, it would have ever gotten out about Watergate.
As a man that's connected with oil, to change the subject a little bit, do you favor gas rationing, or do you think they should increase the tax on it?
Well, I believe that probably increasing the tax would be better than rationing, because I don't know of any really fair system they can come up with. Like, I drive quite a ways to work,
Yeah.
and if they ration gas on me, I'm going to be out of a job.
Working at a refinery, do you get your gas at a discount rate at all?
No, I do not.
You don't?
No.
I bet you that irritates you now.
It really does. You think that, well, I mean, I'm there, I'm doing it, I ought to have first crack at it.
Yeah.
That's like you can't tell me the guy that delivers home heating oil is not going to make sure his home is serviced before everybody else's is.
Uh-huh.
But I have to go buy mine at a gas station.
Uh-huh.
And,
I guess maybe that's only fair.
well, yeah, it is only fair. I agree, but...
should be impeached. This seems to be the consensus tonight. I wonder if the consensus, I can't even say the word, that the majority of the American public has yet believed that President Nixon should be impeached, or should he resign. I personally believe that if it comes up to a point of a question of impeachment versus resignation, they should have impeachment, because the impeachment proceedings will bring out the facts in the cases to whether the president was actually innocent or guilty. I, for one, think it's unfortunate that former Vice President Agnew resigned without being brought to trial and letting the facts come out in the open. This, of course, is my opinion. We would like your opinion at 533-1661, 533-1661. I guess there's been a big rush on the sale of sweaters for this winter, for the supposed cold that is going to come on us all. And I imagine a lot of people are out in the wood chopping down firewood for their fireplaces to keep warm this summer in lieu of the energy crisis and the heating oil shortage. President Nixon, in one of his news conferences previously, has said that he is going to put a lot of money into nuclear research, into building up these nuclear power plants to supply us energy, which in my mind would be a fantastic thing if we could get it going. There's been a lot of argument, especially by the ecologists, against nuclear power plants. One of them is, the major one is, of course, the pollution, primarily radioactive pollution. These nuclear power plants put off radioactive waste. They have to dispose of them some way, and the ecologists maintain that this is going to pollute the environment. Another form of pollution that the nuclear power plants are alleged to give off is heat pollution. In other words, they have to run rivers, if you will, to cool down their reactors or whatever they have in the nuclear power plants. And as a result, it raises the temperature of the river, and in some way that I don't particularly understand, it upsets the balance of nature. However, on the more positive side, according to relativity, as you may or may not know, I'm an engineer, and I had a little relativity in college. But if you took, well, let me start at the beginning. At one time, they believed that matter was conserved, that if you had a hunk of matter, there was nothing you can do to it to get rid of it. You could burn it, you could stamp on it and smash it all around, but when you got done, if you took all the parts of it and put it together, you'd still have the same amount of matter. It was called the law of the conservation of matter. You cannot create or destroy matter. Even when you burn something, if you bring all of the carbon dioxide that you burned and put it back, you could reconstruct well, you couldn't reconstruct, but if you brought it all back and weighed it, it would weigh the same. This is the conservation of matter. On the other hand, you have the conservation of energy, which maintained that if you had energy, there was nothing you could do with it. You could transform it into another part of energy. For example, electrical energy going in a light bulb transforms electrical energy into heat and light. It's transforming energy. However, you could not destroy energy. Energy is always going to be here. Okay, you cannot create or destroy energy. This was called the law of conservation of energy. So you have these two laws in classical physics, which says you cannot create or destroy matter, and B, you cannot create or destroy energy. Well, Albert Einstein came along with his famous E equals mc squared and say, hey, these two laws belong together because really matter is energy and energy is matter. Matter, in other words, everything around you that you can touch and feel, that is considered matter. All that is condensed energy. And as a result of this formulation, they created the hydrogen bomb, or the atomic bomb, which they dropped on Hiroshima. And that big explosion in Hiroshima resulted from a few ounces of radioactive material being converted into energy. In other words, matter being made into energy. We violated these old laws, which says you couldn't create matter or destroy matter, and you couldn't create energy or destroy energy. What they did was destroy matter and make energy. Now, in the same vein, we could theoretically take a lump of coal and convert it completely into energy. In other words, take the mass of the lump of coal and convert it directly into energy and have enough energy to run New York City for about a week. Of course, this is all in theory. They're having a lot of problems with the practical end of it. As far as efficiency and such go, they need radioactive things to transform them into energy. Yeah? Do you want to say something? Okay. There was somebody hanging around my back here. This is WPFR, Terre Haute, Indiana. As I was saying before, you can take this lump of coal, create it into energy, destroy it completely, and have enough energy to run New York City. The problem is in the control of this energy. The Hiroshima bomb was a few ounces, okay, just a few ounces of radioactive material that was converted to energy, and there was a heck of a lot of power there. The problem is control of it, and of course the efficiency of it, and as we mentioned previously, the pollution aspects of it, which were radioactive and heat pollution. So that's a little point I thought I would throw in as a engineer. We'd like your opinion on the energy crisis, on Watergate, on what you did over Thanksgiving. Did you get your 15-point buck, or did you kill a doe and get fined $500? We could talk about any subject worth discussion at 533-1661, 533-1661. While we're waiting for our next call, I thought it might be nice to read over some tips that you could use to conserve energy. These are energy conservation tips in homes and apartments. Number 1, check your house for insulation. Number 2, make sure your home is properly sealed. Weather stripping around window frames and doors can save you from 10 to 30% on your annual heating and cooling cost. And as a result, 10 to 30% of your fuel consumption for your heating. Seal cracks in your roofs, floors, and walls. Close the fireplace damper when not in use if you have a fireplace. And store storm doors and windows. A less expensive way to insulate windows is, to seal them in clear plastic sheeting. Also, heat or cool only the rooms you are using. All but the last of these just say, once you get heat in your house, try to keep it in. So that's maybe a nice rule of thumb to remember about warming and heating your home or apartment. For the winter, you're asked to open your draperies during the day at the windows which let the sunshine in. Even when it is cold outside, sunshine brings warmth into the house, and close the draperies in the evening to keep the warm inside. Keep your thermostat set at the lowest comfortable temperature during the day, and lower the thermostat setting when you go to bed. Put a lot of sheets on your bed, too. I used to have a great-grandmother. She used to put so many daggone sheets on the bed, even during the summer, that you couldn't put your toes up. You had to sleep with your feet on the side, and it was rather uncomfortable. She would have really enjoyed the energy crisis. Maybe she would have killed everybody with the weight of all the covers, who knows. On purchasing, or not purchasing, but in the use of major appliances, these are some tips on how you might conserve energy this summer. Have your furnace checked once a year and change the filters frequently during their use. Home air conditioning filters should be cleaned every 30 days. Air ducts should be kept free of obstructions. I don't think we'll have too many problems with air conditioners using up too much energy this winter. Freezers should be defrosted when there is 1/4 of an inch of buildup of ice. That's rather interesting. I guess refrigerators would use a lot more energy if you had a lot of ice on them. Clean the lint filter in your clothes dryer regularly. That's one word I cannot say. And also, when possible, dry your clothes outside. When you're cooking, you can save energy by matching the pot size to the burner size and keep the lids on your pots. Don't over-peep. Every time you open the oven, it will lose 20% of its heat. And generally, some ways to conserve energy are repairing a hot water faucet that drips. That'll save a lot of hot water for showers and baths and save you the energy it would take to heat the water. Lights, televisions, and radios should be turned off when not in use, and fluorescent lights use much less energy and last longer than common incandescent bulbs. This was this energy thing we were talking about. Incandescent bulbs transform a lot of the electrical energy into heat, whereas fluorescent bulbs convert most of it into electricity. No, I mean into light. I'm confusing. I'm trying to think about queuing up this record here at the side. Hey, we'll be back with a little more of our program in 1 minute.
Chester, do you know what day today is?
The Wednesday. Office.
Hello, may I put you on the air? Hello, may I put you on the air?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Well, why don't you quit blowing off about...
Do you have your... Excuse me, sir. Do you have your radio on in the background?
Yeah.
Could you turn it off? It's awful confusing to talk and listen to yourself at the same time. Okay?
Why don't you quit blowing off about Nixon and that gasoline and put the country music on?
You don't like the talk program, I take it then?
No.
Why is that?
Why, you've got too much of it on.
Well, don't you think that people should be able to voice their opinions?
Why, yeah, they have, yeah, but there's just too much of it.
There's too much of it. We only set aside one night a week.
But you carried on for how many hours, though?
Well, we carry it on until people stop calling in.
Oh.
And my personal opinion, I favor a program such as this because I think the average person doesn't have an outlet to express his opinions and ideas. And there are some very good ideas that come from the small person. And very much can be done from a small person if he is concerned about some individual aspect of his society.
Well, I think Nixon's done too much, and I think he should be impeached.
You do think President Nixon should be impeached?
Yeah. Because he's more or less what he done during his first campaign. He said he's going to bring the war to the end right away. See,
Right.
which he didn't.
Well, he finally did get it to an end. I think everybody has to at least
about 4
admit
years.
that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, about 4 years. Yeah.
Well, supposedly he brought us peace in Vietnam with honor. I don't know if he did or not. He might have. I guess it's just for everybody's own opinion.
That's misleading the people, you know.
What's that?
When he said that he had a secret way of ending that war, and he didn't.
You know, that's right. I do recall that President Nixon said he did have a plan for ending the Vietnam War, but he didn't want to tell anybody about it because it would ruin the plan. That was in his campaign, wasn't it?
Yeah.
What do you think happened to it? Do you think that was deceit on his part, maybe?
Well, I don't know. But I know during World War II, when Roosevelt was president, and his vice president was Truman. Remember that?
No, I wasn't around then.
Oh, he wasn't around.
No.
Uh-huh.
What about it?
Well,
Sir, could I ask you to turn down your radio, please?
just a second.
Okay, fine. We do ask that when you do call in that you do turn down your radio because it is very confusing to listen to yourself talk and talk also at the same time as this gentleman has had problem doing a little bit, and he's turning down his radio now. Okay, go ahead, sir. It seems that he hasn't turned his radio down. I don't know if you listeners can hear in the background, but it is still going on. Maybe he has to go into the other room. Hello, sir? Hello?
Yeah.
Okay, you finally got your radio down.
Finally got it now.
Okay, now what were you saying about Roosevelt and Truman now?
Well, Roosevelt, he had that war going on, didn't he?
Was that World War II?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then his vice president was Truman at that time, wasn't it?
Okay, if you have your history correct, yeah, okay.
Yeah, he had about 4 different vice presidents.
Uh-huh.
Garner and Wallace and Truman. Well, Roosevelt died in office, didn't he?
Yeah, right, and then Truman got put in, and he wasn't overly all familiar with what was going on with the presidency, and he was confronted with the A-bomb decision and on and on.
Yeah. And it wasn't, Truman didn't become president very long after Roosevelt died.
Right.
He brought that war to the end right now.
Truman would have.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
How would have Truman handled it, do you think?
Well, I think he threw a big bomb on them, and he was going to bomb them clear out into the ocean.
You think then Truman would have dropped a big bomb on Vietnam?
Huh?
You think he would have dropped a big bomb on South Vietnam?
Oh, yeah.
Uh-huh. Don't you think that possibly the Soviet Union would have retaliated with another bomb on North Vietnam or South Vietnam? I'm sorry, we're getting our North and South mixed up.
Yeah.
But don't you think the Soviet Union would have retaliated with another bomb?
Well, I don't know. They might have, but they didn't.
Well, we didn't drop the bomb initially, by George.
No.
I mean, these are things presidents have to take into consideration. We have to figure out and take into consideration how the Soviet Union and our enemies are going to act, because they're near as powerful as we are, and they can do us grave damage if we don't watch it and we irritate them enough.
Yeah, you're right.
So maybe Truman would have done it, but maybe we would have had World War III, too. You know, these are just arguments. It's sometimes fruitless to argue about ifs. Paul Harvey said that if Truman was alive and he was questioned about Watergate, that we wouldn't have the Watergate situation today.
Yeah.
And I thought this was rather interesting. Truman would have been at the news conference, and somebody would have asked him, Mr. President, there's been people in your employee who have been doing things that are illegal to get you reelected. And Truman would have answered, well, by George, I hope so. He says, but if they did it and they got caught, they're going to have to pay for it, and that would have been the end of it.
Yeah.
I have heard so many people say that President Truman was a very good president. I don't know. I wasn't alive. I don't think I was alive during his administration at all, though.
Yeah, he was kind of a, I don't know, he's kind of hard at that, Truman was, you know. He had the slogan that if the heat was too hot, why, get out of the kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you think then he would have got out of Vietnam then, right away?
Yeah.
What do you think of Truman would have done about the energy crisis?
I really don't know. I don't know what he has done about that.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't. But he made a pretty good president, though, at that.
Yeah, I've heard so many people say, I'm not familiar personally with it, or historically even with his administration, but this is just secondhand information passed on me by my parents' generation.
Yeah.
Well, I thank you so much for calling, sir.
So thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Oh, there was a gentleman who called initially to express his discontent at our talk program and then went on and expressed some of his views. That's what we invite you to do now at 533-1661, 533-1661. And we have about 3 more minutes until we have news. We can accept a call and talk to you for a little bit. WPFR, may I put you on the air? I can't put you on the air. Okay, go ahead. I'll try to relay the information to our listeners. You say the previous gentleman that called in called to bawl me out and ended up thanking me. Did you enjoy that, I take it? You did. Quit laughing. You'll make me laughing. It doesn't sound good. Thank you so much for calling. Okay, bye-bye. She thought it was rather amusing that the turn of events had happened at the last gentleman that called, who expressed some of his views. He, I don't know if he said it or I said it, that Truman was a good president. He did say that Truman would have put a stop to Vietnam from the Vietnam situation. You know, it's unfortunate. Kissinger, of course, patched up North and South Vietnam, supposedly, and did get the United States out with quote-unquote honor. And we're sitting back at home now, and the Vietnam War, of course, is flourishing again in its entirety, which is rather unfortunate, I do believe. Okay, we don't have time for another call to talk to you to any length. If you have something quick to say, we would invite you to call at 533-1661. Otherwise, we would invite your call during news to reserve your place in line, or after news, whichever suits you best. This is WPFR, Terre Haute, Indiana. Before we take a break for news, I think I'll go over some more of these tips on how you can save energy. I'm doing this because I personally believe that we are confronted. Of course, we don't have to particularly talk about the energy crisis. We can talk about other subjects on the international or local scene, for that matter. We have in the past talked about things that are happening here in Terre Haute, including the renovation of downtown Terre Haute. It seems, as we mentioned on our last talk show, that many of the major cities are, if you will, rotting from the center. It used to be that the major cities in the middle were the business and the heartbeat of the city. But suburbia came across. Everybody began moving to suburbia. And as a result, the inner city started rotting because everybody was moving from there into suburbia. The merchants began setting up branch stores in modern malls such as we have here in Terre Haute, such as Honey Creek Square, which I imagine is one of the biggest competitors of downtown Terre Haute. Do you think it's fair for Terre Haute to spend your money to benefit downtown Terre Haute, to build it up, to make it more accessible? Or do you think possibly that your money is being wasted, that really it benefits you in no way? What's your opinion on it? We would like it at 533-1661. We also mentioned before about possible plans for slant parking down in Terre Haute, and we've talked on the previous talk show about the possibility of maybe putting parkades in Terre Haute. What these are very, very large buildings that can accommodate many, many times more cars than can just a single parking lot. In essence, it's just a parking lot stacked upon a parking lot upon a parking lot up to as many as 20 or 30 stories. They do have such big ones, for example, in Cleveland that I am familiar with, and it takes you about a good 10 minutes to drive to the top of them. Do you think this might be a possible solution for downtown Terre Haute's parking problem, which is rather bad? Or do you have any other ideas that you'd like to share with us? We would like your opinions and comments at 533-1661, 533-1661. The consensus, changing the subject a little bit, the consensus of the people that have called in tonight have been in favor of the impeachment of President Nixon. What do you think about this? Do you think that President Nixon should be impeached, or do you think that the man is doing all that he can and that he was true and he was honest when he said that he was declaring executive privilege in not releasing the Watergate tapes? Do you believe Rosemary Wood, the president's personal secretary, did accidentally erase the tapes? Or do you think this might be some higher plot to suppress some of the Watergate evidence? What's your opinion? Would like to hear it at 533-1661. We'll give you about 5 more minutes to call in if you'd like to. Again, this is your program. This program is for you. It is for people to call in, express their ideas, their opinions on just about any issue. We've allowed discussion of quite diverse issues here in our Teletalk program. And if you think that it is not necessary to call in, if you have nothing you'd like to voice, we'll just go back to the country music because this is your program. And if you don't feel like you'd want to say anything on it today, we'll, of course, go back to the country music. However, we would like to talk to you. When you do call in, I'll ask your permission to put you on the air. This is a legal thing. And also, when you do call in, we ask that you turn your radio down, because if you don't turn your radio down, you're going to have problems talking to us. So again, 533-1661. I watched a program on The Late Show the other night, and we'll talk about that maybe in a little bit. WPFR, may I put you on the air? Yeah, go ahead, sir. Yeah, go ahead, sir. No, this is Teletalk. Do you have your radio on?
In other words, I can speak on whatever I want to speak.
Right. Is your radio on?
No.
Oh, it isn't. Okay, maybe that was here in the studio. Okay, go ahead.
Well, I've been wondering about all this here oil crisis. The United States is worried about the oil crisis.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I have a remedy. If we would treat the Arab countries as good as we do Israel, we would not have lost their oil to us.
Oh, that's for true.
Now, every country has a feeling and a story of how they want their neighbors to act and how they want to feel towards each other. Now, we have to realize that the Arabs is human beings too, with feelings of their own. While we are pro-Israel, let us be pro-Arab too, and they will know and realize we are a country for all people, not just a few selected people and few selected countries.
Now, somebody arguing against you would maintain that the Soviet Union is supporting the Arab countries, and therefore us, as traditional enemies, if you will, of the Soviet Union, are obligated to support Israel. And also,
well, that's true. I don't say we shouldn't support Israel. I don't mean that.
Okay.
But I mean we should support the Arabs and realize that they have feelings too. They have their own story to tell. See.
Mm-hmm.
And as you well know, that even though Russia is helping out the Arabian countries and we're helping out Israel, at the same time, we are fighting like the devil to get good with Russia and have Russia good with us. So that holds up my theory.
Yeah, I do see your point. Or aren't we doing this, in essence, in trying to work out a peace settlement in the Mideast?
Well, I think we're doing about all they can do, maybe for the time being. But it just thought to remember that all enemies don't stay enemies. In other words, you can take Japan. They were our worst enemy at one time. Now
And
they're
Germany.
one of our best friends.
Yeah, right.
So just humanize things a little bit, and I think it'll all come out.
Well, you know, Japan has switched their foreign policy in favor of the
What do you think?
Arab countries. Japan has switched their foreign policy in favor of the Arab countries because the Japanese economy would collapse without Arab oil.
It's a necessity for some country that doesn't have enough oil and enough products of their own.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they were forced to do that, and I don't think they made a bad move.
What do you think the United States should do a similar thing?
Well, I wouldn't want them to give up Israel, but I want them to be a little kinder to the Arabian countries, too.
Do you think we're too mean to the Arabs?
No, I wouldn't say mean. No, that's not the word for it.
Inconsiderate?
Maybe not considerate enough.
Do you think that this would curtail...
You see, the worst trouble with this thing is that back for years and years and years, those countries has fought. First one's in power and then the other's out, and so forth and so on.
Uh-huh.
But we're living in a different generation now, and they're going to have to settle down and get along with each other, and it'll all come out.
You think so?
I think so.
I hope so.
What do you think?
I don't know.
I'd like to ask your opinion. What do you think? Do you think we should be a little more considerate with the Arabian countries?
Well, first of all, let me give an idea, okay? This is WPFR, Terre Haute, Indiana. No, I'm afraid I have to be a little pro-Israel. I don't know if we are treating the Arabs, inconsiderate, as you say, because, again, I think the Soviet Union is supplying the Arabs with all of their machinery and their war machine, if you will.
Uh-huh.
And that, as a result, we have to support Israel just to maintain balance.
We don't have to.
We almost do because Israel...
We don't have to. We wouldn't have to do that at all.
Uh-huh.
No more than we would have to fight for some other country or help them out.
Yeah, well, my major concern, I am a Christian, if you will, I guess a rather fundamentalist by most judgment,
Yeah.
and it concerns me a little bit with the fulfillment of biblical prophecy. Of course, according to scriptures in Christianity, the Jews are God's chosen people, right? And
well, who is God's chosen people?
The
Don't
Jews.
get me into the Bible here.
oh, okay. Well, you asked my opinion, and I'm
God's chosen people, when you stop and think about it, those same people that's over there now probably isn't God's chosen people. They've come from all over the country to make a country of their own over there. Or all over the world, yeah.
You're saying about Israel, then?
Yeah, or Israel.
Mm-hmm. Well, see, this was prophesied in the Bible. It said that Israel, which of course existed in biblical times, if you will, it was prophesied that when Israel split up, that someday from Jews from all over the world would recombine and reform Israel, which has happened. And then it says near the second coming that the world would fight Israel. The entire world would be against Israel. And you can see things pointing toward this because of the major powers that normally would side with Israel are going toward the Arabs because of the oil boycott. And, things are just pointing to this, and this is my main concern. This is my opinion, okay? And possibly a lot of people listening might think that my opinion might be a little corny, but it is what I do believe.
Yeah, that's true. You have your opinion. Other people have theirs.
That's
Everybody
right.
has the right to opinion.
That's right.
As long as it's halfway in the realm, you know. Well, anyway, I'm glad I got to talk to you, and of course there's only one thing I can say. As long as you have something to offer people that they want, why the Arabian country seems to be in the driver's seat on that angle.
That's true. It's true. We're going to be hurting because of their oil. Of course, they don't supply that great a percentage. It's only
the United States is not going to hurt that much over it. I think the United States is they're blowing it up all out of proportion. I don't think we're going to hurt that much. For instance, like around here, they say we're not going to hurt for electricity. Well, I believe that there's other ways we have of getting oil, and with what we've got in Canada and so forth and so on. I just don't believe we're going to be pushed in that tight a corner, even if we don't get any oil from Egypt or any place down through there.
So you don't think it's really going to hurt us that much? You think the whole thing's being overblown then?
I think it's being overblown. Yeah. I don't mean that we don't have trouble.
Mm-hmm.
There is a shortage without a doubt, but I don't think it's as bad as what it seems to be. Because it's just like anything. If you throw a little scare into somebody, why and then somebody says something else. First thing you know, you're just a bunch of scared people.
Yeah.
And boy, if there's anything that's going to scare you, is when you can't get in your automobile and drive. You'd rather do without food, you know.
I think most people would, truly.
Yeah, that's right at that.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for calling
Okay,
in.
nice talking to you.
Okay, bye-bye, sir.
Bye.
Okay, we'll be back with a few more comments and hopefully a few more calls in 1 minute.
Did you ever wonder? Fact is, Social Security has changed our lifestyle. For more information, call any Social Security office.
WPFR, may I put you on the air? No, I don't believe so. I don't think we'll have time for it this evening. Was it on last week? Oh, it was. How about that? Okay. Well, thank you so much. Bye-bye. Okay, that was a gentleman who wondered if Album Time will be on tonight. Album Time, what we do is normally at around 7:30 or 8:30 we choose an album, usually one of the most recent releases, and we play the album in its entirety. And usually I do this on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, and it's a very rare thing, I think, on radio to hear an album in its entirety, so we might put a little plug in for that and invite you to listen to it. And that's Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and sometimes Friday. Sounds like a good name for a song, doesn't it? This is WPFR FM, Terre Haute, Indiana. We have about 25 minutes to the hour of 8 o'clock. And this is our Teletalk program, excuse me, where you're invited to speak out on things which concern you at 533-1661, 533-1661. Before the last call, I was mentioning I watched a movie on the Late Show last night, and it was with, it wasn't last night, it was a couple nights ago. It was with Richard Widmark and Sidney Poitier, and it was about a racial type of thing. And it brought to my mind some of the conversations I have had with people who maintain that in applying for a job, for example, that they have been treated unfairly because of a parallel black applicant who was favored because of his race. And I've heard so much of this that I was just wondering if it was true, if anybody out there has had any experiences like this. Or do you believe that maybe the black community has to be favored a little bit? What's your opinion on such things? Do you think that the blacks are melding into society? Do you believe that minorities are melding into society as the Equal Rights Amendment has wanted it to be? What's your opinion on that? We'd welcome it at 533-1661, 533-1661. I guess while we're waiting for our next call, if there is a next call, we can read you some more tips on how to conserve energy. These are kind of interesting. They're little ones. They're obvious, but maybe subtle. Maybe they're not so obvious. Maybe they're a little more subtle. This is one: if you are buying or building a house, you're supposed to check for adequate insulation. 3 to 4 inches on the walls and 6 on the ceiling are adequate for almost all regions in the country. For a new home, the added cost of installing more insulations will be returned to you within a few years by saving on utility bills. In other words, spend a little money now and then save it in the long run. For clothes washing, make sure that your water heater is set no higher than 140 degrees. Wait until you have a full load to wash clothes. Use the coldest water practical. Of course, hot water is more expensive than cold water because it takes energy to heat water. Now, the following are some energy conservation tips in transportation. Number one, I guess probably the most important, is use your car only when you need to. You're asked to walk or take public transportation or ride a bike for short trips. Create and support carpools for transportation to work, school, or shopping. Check the possibility of taking a bus or train for out-of-town trips. These are some things that you can do to conserve energy, if you so desire to conserve energy. Some people, it seems to be the consensus here tonight that most people believe that we are not actually faced with an energy crisis, that the whole thing is being overblown a little bit. The first gentleman that called in this evening maintained that President Nixon had initiated the energy shortage to cover up the news media's coverage of Watergate and to kind of suppress Watergate and President Nixon's unpopularity. If he did so, in my opinion, I don't think it was too successful, because I think people will get more down on the president when he starts suppressing the consumption of energy. You might hear in the background a siren. I guess somebody has had a fire or an accident in the residence of the WPFR studio. If you have any questions about the operation or running of WPFR, we'd be happy to answer them and talk to you about them at 533-1661, 533-1661. It's interesting, the radio station itself is on the wing of a house, and the owner, Mr. Ford, who also owns WKZI in Casey, Illinois, which I imagine a lot of you country music fans close to the Illinois border are familiar with, because they have more radio listeners for WKZI than they do for the major radio station here in town. We could talk about radio if you'd like, the operation of WPFR, WKZI. If you'd like to ask me anything, we would welcome it at 533-1661, 533-1661. We had a call before, a couple talk shows ago, about the call letters of stations. We mentioned, if you notice, that every radio station, every television station, every CB station, every ham station in the United States has call letters that begin either with the letters W or with the letters K. The reason for this is because a long time ago, in some long-forgotten room in Geneva, Switzerland, they held a conference of all the major nations in the world, and they passed around the hat, and each nation drew a letter, or two letters, rather. The United States drew the letters K and the letters W. The gentleman I was talking to when we were talking about this said, oh yeah, all the stations west of the Mississippi start with K and all of them east start with W. And I said I wasn't certain, and this isn't the case, because I know there are stations that start with K over on the East Coast. But as a result of this meeting in Switzerland, every radio station, every television station, every CB, every ham, every electromagnetic communication station in the United States has call letters that begin with the letters W or with the letters K. The two or three letters that follow it sometimes stand for something, sometimes they don't. I don't believe the ham call letters stand for anything. WPFR stands for Paul Ford Radio. Some of the stations in town that I'm familiar with, WBOW, BOW stands for Banks of the Wabash. WTHI Radio and Television stand for Terre Haute, Indiana. WAAC, this is interesting. According to Mr. Ford, WAAC got those letters because they wanted to be listed first in the phone book under radio stations and television stations. And there was a station already in the United States with the call letters WAAA, and there was also a station in the United States with call letters WAAB. So they filed for the call letters WAAC, and that's how they got their call letters. I thought that was kind of interesting. Thought I might pass it along to you. I'm not sure of any of the other call letters. WTWO, I think it's obvious what the television station stands for, because they are Channel 2. We can talk about radio, we can talk about national things, international things, and we'll give you about 3 more minutes to give us a call here at WPFR and voice your opinions on what you'd like to talk about. 533-1661 is the number, 533-1661. We had a call one time about a gentleman who maintained he saw a flying saucer, and he described it to us. And it was rather interesting. He maintained he saw this thing, that it did strange things, and he saw extraterrestrial discs in the sky, if you will. And a lot of people don't believe in it, and a lot of them do. And I think what we're going to do is take this call. WPFR, may I put you on the air? Okay, go ahead, sir. Okay, go ahead, sir.
I just wanted to say I was enjoying your program again tonight.
Oh, well, thank you. You called in last week, didn't you?
Yeah, this is 3 weeks in a row now.
Oh.
And I look forward to hearing it every week.
Oh, you do?
And every week it seems like there's some new things that comes up.
Well, yeah, that's the purpose of it.
You don't know what's going to happen each week.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. I try to let the thing take a course of its own. In other words, have people call up and talk, and then have them suggest topics that might interest somebody else, and then have them call up. However, the response hasn't been so good in the last 3 or 4 weeks, so I've kind of had to sit here and talk to myself a lot.
I enjoyed your discussion just a while ago about the call letters. I never realized that's what a lot of them stood for.
Yeah, it is rather interesting.
I didn't understand how they got them and things, but it was kind of interesting to hear about that.
And it's a funny thing because most people have interesting stories, little tidbits, little miscellaneous things that may not be significant, but they're interesting, and it'd be so nice if they could call up and maybe share with us a story like this.
Have you been watching the weather lately to see how it's
yeah,
things has been affecting it?
Well, I told you Ted Ford, who lives here at WPFR, said he heard on the news that scientists have done research about the satellites, with satellites rather, and they have come to the conclusion that, let's see, all that man has done here on Earth, including all of this air pollution, and this would of course include the Skylab rocket going up, has not affected the weather appreciably. In other words, it's been very insignificant. And Mrs. Ford, we mentioned this before also, said that sometimes they have to wait for good weather down in Cape Canaveral before they blast off, right? And it seems that bad weather usually follows good. I'm not familiar that much with the weather, but it seems reasonable. And as a result, when they get good weather down there, we're having bad weather up here because it's kind of following it down.
Yeah, it goes in a big circle. You can check the weather. I like to watch the wind. Basically, if the wind's blowing out of the south for a couple of days, then when it does change, it goes over to the northwest, and then it comes back around to the north, and then it's back over to the east, and it's back around to the south again.
Is that right?
It just makes a big circle, and whatever the weather is down south for a few days, then it picks it up and just brings it right up around.
You mean is this just in Terre Haute? Is this from your own observation?
Yes, I just, just looking at the weather maps in the paper and things, you can just kind of go by it, and like if it's raining down south, well, maybe tomorrow or next day it'll be up here. It'll pick it up and bring it around. And if it's snowing or something up in the northwest, well, you just watch it in a couple of days, it brings it right on around.
Well, it's interesting.
Maybe not in the capacity that it's doing it down there because it kind of fizzles out, before it gets here, but we usually get the tail end of it anyhow.
In other words, the weather from the south kind of comes up here and affects us then. Is that what you're saying? Well, according to that, then, it seems that after the blast-off that we would get good weather instead of this inclement weather after the blast-off from Cape Canaveral.
Well, you just never know. It's just something funny.
Yeah, it's bizarre. That's interesting, though, about the wind going around in a circle.
About the energy crisis now.
Yeah.
One good thing about this is it's going to take a lot of these great big automobiles off the road.
Yeah, that'll be good. I don't think anybody will miss that too much.
I don't. I had a big Pontiac, and we just traded here a couple weeks ago, about a month or so ago now, and we got us a small American Motors car, Hornet, and it's kind of crowded for the family, but no more driving than what we do. We're not in it that long of a time to get all cramped up. Just like last week, I only used 9 gallons of gas. So.
And how much would have you used in the larger car?
Oh, I'm at not to use 15, 16 anyhow.
So you did consume quite a bit.
This is only a 6.
Yeah.
And it makes a lot of difference. It's easier to park, easier to handle, get around with.
But it's a little crowded, you say, huh?
Yeah, basically with 5 or 6 of us. But we make it all right. We get the job done.
Something is interesting. My parents recently bought a trailer, and I have an aunt and uncle that also have a trailer, one of these mobile campers, I guess they call them. And I guess pretty soon that you'll be able to pick up campers at a dime a dozen.
Oh, yeah, because people will have no gas. They can't go nowhere with
it. Right. This is really going to affect the economy, I think, in strange ways.
Well, and even next summer, see, most of these campsites, you have to hook up to the water, you have to hook up to the electricity.
Right.
And these will be higher because, there'll be less of it.
Right.
And, or at least they say there won't be no shortage of electricity, but they never know.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the commodities that, right here in Wabash Valley, we're kind of blessed with is electricity.
Yeah, that's right. I understand.
Power plants all around us, and coal, most of them uses coal. You know, they already have their contracts bought for years ahead, and so they're going to have plenty of coal. So it seems like we're kind of blessed with that.